Hey, tonight, we're going somewhere older than legend, a city of gods and gold. But forget what you saw in textbooks or movies. Because what you're about to experience isn't carved in stone, it's carved in sweat, clay, and fear. You're waking up in a place where everyone knows their rank, where time isn't told by clocks but by priests reading the stars. And here's the terrifying truth. Everything about you, the way you dress, talk, walk, even stand, screams that you don't belong. So if you think this will be some leisurely stroll through a famous city of ancient wonders, I've got bad news. You're not on a guided tour. You've just been dropped, barefoot and bewildered, into the beating heart of one of the most powerful cities the ancient world ever knew, Babylon. It's dawn. The sky is still a cool gray, but that won't last. Soon, the sun will turn this whole place into a clay oven. You're lying on a woven reed mat in a dark mud brick room. The air smells of stale oil, animal fat, and dust. No windows, just a small opening near the ceiling where flies and smoke share the same entrance. You sit up, and that's your first mistake. A sharp voice outside. Laziness is rebellion. You flinch. You don't understand the words, but the tone is clear. Babylon doesn't tolerate driftwood. Everyone here is part of something bigger. A household, a temple, a trade, a rank. To be idle is to offend the very structure of the city. You duck through the low door frame and step outside. Blinding light. Dry heat already rising from the packed earth streets. You're standing between rows of buildings made from sun-baked mud brick, stacked tight like books on a shelf. No greenery, no breeze. Just the distant sound of pounding grain, bleating goats, and the high-pitched calls of market women. Then you look up, and that's when you see it. The ziggurat. A step pyramid so massive it seems to tilt the horizon. Each tier is painted a faded blue, like the sky itself descended in layers. Priests are already climbing it, barefoot and slow, clutching bowls of incense and bread. It's called Etemenanki, the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. You're told it touches the gods, but don't be fooled. This place is no utopia. The gods here don't whisper gently. They roar through droughts and deaths and disease. And everyone from the king to the cowherd is watching the sky for signs of what comes next. A boy rushes past you, balancing a clay pot on his head. You hear a merchant shout from a doorway, "You there? Who owns you?" You hesitate, and suddenly people stop and stare. Because in Babylon, no one is just themselves. You belong to a household, a patron, a temple, a city, and if you don't, you're a threat. Or worse, you're a slave without a master. And that makes you dangerous. Your feet ache. The dirt is cracked and hot. Your clothes, whatever you were dropped into this world wearing, are completely wrong. Babylon's people wear wool or flax, dyed in earthy reds and ochres, belted at the waist, draped for modesty, always signaling status. You're dressed like a fool, or a foreigner, or both. Now, eyes follow you. Suspicion spreads fast here. You walk wrong. You look wrong. You're not wearing your hair like a Sumerian. You have no seal, no trade, no clan. You're invisible on paper but obvious in flesh. And in Babylon, what isn't recorded might as well not exist. A hand grabs your arm rough, calloused. A voice in your ear. "Where's your seal?" You stammer. No answer. Wrong again. Everyone here carries a small carved cylinder seal, pressed into clay, to prove their identity, their contracts, their legitimacy. Without it, you can't buy, trade, marry, or prove who you are. You're nobody, and nobody in Babylon is safe. The man lets go, muttering something about the gods punishing liars. You step back. And that's when you trip over a line of crushed pottery left out to dry in the sun. It shatters under your foot. dozens of hours of work gone. And here's the worst part. Breaking a pot isn't just clumsy, it's a crime. Property damage in a city built on strict justice is no joke. The maker could demand compensation. If you can't pay, welcome to the law of retaliation. An eye for an eye, quite literally. And we'll get to that. But before the potter comes screaming through the alley, before you try to explain your way out of a punishment you don't even understand, there's something else you should know. The heat is just beginning. Babylon isn't just physically hot, it's socially boiling, complex, coded, unforgiving. Every step you take from here on out is walking a tightrope between reverence and ruin. And to understand just how badly this day is going to go, we need to head straight to the one place that controls it all. The marketplace. The marketplace is already awake before the sun has even cleared the rooftops, and it's loud. Voices rise in a dozen tongues, all blending into the kind of roar that vibrates in your chest. Traders from Elam, fishermen from the marshlands, goat herders from the hills, scribes, priests, children, soldiers, slaves. Everyone comes here, to the pulsing center of Babylon. And you're standing in the middle of it like a lost animal. The ground is hard-packed clay, patterned with footprints, wheel ruts, and dark stains. Dust kicks into your face with every passing cart. There's the metallic clank of bronze tools, the creak of ox cart axles, the smack of sandals on stone. And above it all, the heat begins to rise like a slow, invisible tide. By midday, this place will be unbearable. But for now, it's only oppressive. You try to move, to disappear into the crowd. But that's the problem. In Babylon, you can't just wander. Every stall is claimed. Every square of earth has a name tied to it, a contract etched into clay, filed in a temple, enforced by scribes and guards. Stand too long near someone's goods, and you're trespassing. Touch anything, and you're stealing. Ask a question without the proper formula of greeting, and you've just insulted their ancestors. Someone shouts. A fruit seller's arm flies towards you, fast. Not to hit, not yet, but to gesture wildly. Do not touch the dates unless you intend to buy. You pull back. The fruit is dusty and wrinkled, but it's food, and you haven't eaten. Yet here's the terrible truth. Even if you had a pouch of silver rings or a sack of barley, Babylon's real currency, you wouldn't know how to use it. Because money here isn't simple. It's not about coins. It's about weights, standardized bits of metal or grain measured with scales, overseen by scribes. Cheat the weight, and you've just committed fraud. Misread the units, and you're bankrupt. The smallest miscalculation can change your fate. A woman next to you haggles expertly for a handful of fish. She spits on the ground when the seller gives her a high price, not out of disrespect, but ritual disgust. A second later, they're laughing and trading. You try to imitate her posture. The merchant sees right through you. New slave? He asks dryly. Or just stupid? You say nothing, because every word you speak sounds wrong here. Your accent is strange. Your grammar? Primitive. And in a city that reveres the written word as divine, speaking poorly is like walking around naked. It's not just embarrassing, it's suspicious. You retreat from the stall, your stomach growls. In Babylon, food is both sacred and survival. Everything here revolves around grain, barley for bread, for porridge, for ale. Not that ale means what you think it's thick, cloudy, often laced with whatever wild yeasts and river water were available that day. Potent? Sometimes. Safe? Rarely. You spot a stall selling steaming flatbreads from a clay oven. The smell is warm and earthy, filled with spice. You reach for one. A hand slaps your wrist. The vendor, a boy not much older than you, snarls something that includes the word temple, and now you're in real trouble. You just tried to buy a bread offering reserved for Enlil, god of wind and kingship. It's been marked for sacrifice. You've just stolen from the divine. A man in a leather kilt is already walking toward you, holding a staff. He's not a guard, he's worse, a temple official. You start backing away, panicking, but a voice cuts in behind you. Forgive him, he's from the south. He doesn't know the city. It's a lie. A good one. The man speaking is a scribe, you can tell by the clay tablet in his hand and the stylus tucked into his belt. His eyes flick over you like a book. He says a few smooth words to the official, offers a token, and the situation dissolves. But his smile, when he turns to you, isn't kind. You owe me now, he says quietly. And scribes never forget debts. You nod, not knowing what else to do. The scribe walks off, robes fluttering in the dust. You feel 100 eyes on you again, watching, measuring, wondering who you belong to. Because no one walks this market alone unless they have power or are being watched closely. And now, you're both. Suddenly, you realize why everything feels so dangerous. You have no story, no name, no status, no protection. And in Babylon, your place in the social web is the only thing keeping you from being trampled, enslaved, or worse. A distant chant begins voices from the ziggurat. The priests are climbing higher. Smoke curls from incense bowls. The gods are awakening. But you're falling behind. You've offended a priest, insulted a merchant, taken charity from a scribe, and nearly stolen holy bread all before the second hour of the day. And the worst part? You haven't even broken a law yet. Because Babylon's real terror, its legendary, bone-breaking legal system is waiting just ahead. And if you think modern rules are harsh, wait until you meet Hammurabi. You find yourself walking along a broad avenue now wider than the market lanes, lined with lion carvings and sun-bleached reliefs. The sun's higher. The heat has started to press down like a weight. It's not just hot, it's deliberate, almost judicial. And soon, you realize why. Because rising before you is a dark monument of black basalt, tall, polished, and carved top to bottom in dense cuneiform. You've just come face to face with Hammurabi's code. This isn't some dusty archive. It's in the open, towering over passers-by, as if to remind everyone, yes, the gods are watching, but so is the law. And here's the terrifying part. You can't read a single word of it. But Babylon can. Every brickmaker, butcher, and barley farmer knows what's written here because they've been told since birth. The penalties, the prices, the punishments. It's not a set of suggestions. It's reality chiseled in stone. You lean in. At the top, there's a carving of the king himself, standing before Shamash, the god of justice, receiving the laws like Moses on the Mount. But these commandments aren't about peace or mercy. They're about order. Babylon runs on a logic that's brutal, brilliant, and utterly alien to modern minds. And if you think you'll be judged by intent, think again. Here, it's all about outcome. Break a pot, pay the price. Cause a death even by accident? Prepare to lose a limb? Steal from a temple? No trial, no jury, just execution. It doesn't matter if it was a mistake, or if you didn't mean to. Babylonian law doesn't care about your heart, only your impact. And it doesn't forgive ignorance, especially yours. A scribe nearby begins reading the code aloud to a group of listeners. You recognize none of the words, but the tone is chilling. He pauses on one line, looks directly at someone in the crowd, and repeats it louder. If a builder builds a house, and it collapses, and kills the owner's son, the builder's son shall be put to death. No one flinches. That's just how things work here. Life is a ledger, actions on one side, consequences on the other. And justice? It's mathematical. An older woman beside you spits softly in the dust. She sees your expression, the shock on your face, and chuckles. "Don't worry," she mutters in thick Akkadian. "They don't execute visitors, just enslave them. You laugh nervously, but she's not joking. Because here's the thing. Babylon has no patience for outsiders who disrupt the balance. If you cause trouble and you're not from a known house or temple or city-state, you don't get a trial. You become property. A dead asset. Or a human offering to the system. That bread you almost stole this morning? That alone could have seen you whipped, branded, or sold off. And now, something else is starting to dawn on you, something colder than Hammurabi's laws. You can't leave. There are no maps, no signs, no tour guides. The city is a maze of mud brick alleys and gated courtyards, where ownership is everything and secrets are sacred. People vanish here all the time. Not from magic or murder, but from paperwork. One misfiled tablet, and your existence is erased. You press deeper into the city, hoping to find someone, anyone who might explain what you need to survive. Instead, you find a street full of clay scribes. Dozens of them, crouched on woven mats, clay tablets balanced on their knees. Their hands move fast, styluses tapping into the wet surface like woodpeckers. Here is Babylon's true engine, not its armies or ziggurats, but its record keepers. Everything is written: births, marriages, trades, sales, crimes, cattle deaths, grain counts, dreams, omens, you name it, it's pressed into clay. And if you can't read or write cuneiform, you're powerless. You approach one of the scribes. He doesn't look up. You speak slowly in broken phrases, hoping some words land. He scowls, waves you away. A man with no seal, no trade, and no history is no man at all. So you sit. You squat beside one of the outer walls, among the dogs and dust, and try to breathe. The clay radiates heat. Your throat's dry. And your feet blistered, cracked, or bleeding into the cracks of a world that doesn't care you exist. And that's when you hear it. A whisper from someone leaning out of a shaded archway. "Come, you shouldn't be here." Another stranger, but his tone is urgent. You rise, unsteady. Because Babylon's legal code may be terrifying, but the unwritten rules, those are even worse. And to learn how this city really works, you'll have to leave the streets behind and descend into the alleys where ink meets shadow. You follow the voice into shadow. The man leads you through a twisting corridor of clay brick walls, so narrow you can barely turn around. The sun vanishes. The air is close, heavy. And with every step, you feel yourself descending not just into the city's underbelly, but into a whole different set of rules. "You're lucky," the man mutters, glancing over his shoulder. "Market scribes spotted you. Could have ended worse, but even a fool in the open deserves a chance underground." You try to ask where he's taking you, but he just grunts. Where the law doesn't reach. And in Babylon, that means only one thing: the black market. Eventually, the alley widens into a courtyard covered with woven mats and shaded by a canvas sheet strung between buildings. Around the edges, clusters of people trade goods with hushed voices, not silver or barley, but things forbidden, hidden, or untraceable. A boy squats beside a jar of powdered lapis, blue as a god's eye. A woman sharpens a blade that looks far too clean for farm work. Nearby, an older man balances on a stool, selling pieces of stamped clay, forged tokens of temple ownership. "Need an identity?" the man asks. "A name? A story? A shrine to swear by?" It hits you. This is the part of Babylon, no clay tablet records, the Babylon between the lines. Here, the laws of Hammurabi don't protect you, but they also don't limit you. Because down here, power belongs to those who know the gaps. Your guide, who finally gives you a name, Amel gestures toward a crude bench and hands you a cup. Drink barley beer, not temple grade, but safe. It's sour, thick, but it numbs your hunger and cuts the panic in your throat. Amel leans in, eyes scanning you like an account to be tallied. You're not from any city, state I know. Accent's wrong. Posture's worse. You move like a deer waiting to be butchered. You bristle. But he's not done. In Babylon, that'll get you dead. Or worse claimed, you ask what he means. Look around, he whispers. Everyone here has a seal. Not just a name, a claim. You belong to a house, a temple, a trade guild. If you don't, you're free meat. Anyone can take you, brand you, sell you, or offer you to Marduk's priests as penance. Your stomach knots? In your world, freedom is protection. Here, it's the opposite. You want to last more than a day? Amel says. Then you need cover. You need a role, fast. And in Babylon, roles mean masks. Some are scribes, some are midwives, some are messengers, prostitutes, grain counters, animal handlers, omen readers. Each role is a position in the grand machinery, a cog that spins, writes, eats, and feeds the city. You ask what Amel does. He smirks. Officially, courier for the House of Enlil. Unofficially, I run errands, dangerous ones. Messages too delicate for tablets, people too loud for the streets. Secrets that can't be spoken where scribes listen. The way he says it sends a chill through your spine. You realize Babylon is not just a city of bricks and dust. It's a city of records, secrets, and control. And every person here is either an owner of information or owned by it. Amel continues. You think Hammurabi's code is the law? Number. The real law is the clay. And he shows you a fragment of a tablet wrapped in linen, stamped, sealed. The characters are impossibly small, etched with surgical precision. This little thing, worth more than 5 sacks of grain. It says who owns a temple garden in Sippar. But the scribe who wrote it made a mistake. One name wrong. If that gets seen, a whole priesthood falls. He chuckles, but there's no humor in it. That's power. Not swords, not armies, words baked in fire. You sit with that for a moment, absorbing the weight of it. Because Babylon isn't just dangerous because of heat or hunger or Hammurabi. It's dangerous because it remembers everything. Every mistake, every debt, every false oath or stolen loaf or whispered insult. And right now, Babylon doesn't remember you, which means you're free but not safe. So when Amel leans in and says, I can get you a role, a name, a seal, but it'll cost, you already know the answer. Because in Babylon, you either belong to someone or you disappear. And disappearing in this city isn't metaphorical. You take the deal. Not because you trust Amel, but because you've seen what happens to people in Babylon who don't belong. You're given a new name, Namtaru, which he says means something like divine breath, though the irony is not lost on you. You don't feel divine. You feel like a pawn on a clay tablet, about to be slotted into a column next to the barley counts and goat tallies. Your role? A temple assistant. You'll be attached to Esagila, Amel explains. Marduk's temple, biggest in Babylon. Be grateful. You could have ended up digging irrigation canals in Kish or fetching bricks for the ziggurat ovens. But as you soon learn, temple work in Babylon doesn't mean kneeling in silence and lighting incense. It means accounting. It means physical labor. It means serving a God who never sleeps, never eats, and always collects. The Esagila isn't a single building. It's a compound, massive, imposing, more fortress than sanctuary. You pass through its thick gates and immediately feel it. This isn't a place of comfort. It's a machine. You're given a tunic, rough wool, a badge, and a clay token stamped with the emblem of Marduk's eye. No one tells you where to go. You follow the line of temple workers, men and women carrying baskets of bread, jars of oil, amphorae of beer. The temple doesn't just serve the city, it owns it. Emil wasn't exaggerating. In Babylon, temples aren't just places of worship, they are banks, granaries, courts, warehouses, and labor offices. And Marduk's temple? It owns land across the empire. It loans silver to merchants at interest. It runs schools. It owns slaves. It even owns entire villages whose only job is to supply it with fish, reeds, or bricks. You learn this as you shadow a scribe named Nabuz, who walks you through the rows of storerooms, each one cataloged on tablets stacked high on reed shelves. "We received 12 oxen from Sipper this week," he mutters, skimming a tablet. "Only 10 arrived, 2 missing. You'll help investigate." You blank. You've been in the city less than a day and you're already being sent to check missing livestock? But this is how Babylon works. Even the gods keep ledgers. Outside the temple's granary, you help weigh barley. Everything is recorded. The moisture, the yield, the priest's cut, the worker's share. Every scoop that's even slightly off is questioned. A man nearby is accused of shorting the offering weight. He pleads his case, says the scales were faulty. The priest doesn't blink. He owes 5 shekels. If he doesn't pay by sundown, the temple claims his house. You want to protest? It's barley. But in Babylon, barley is currency, and the temple doesn't lose. Your duties shift as the sun climbs. You scrub floors, carry jars, and fetch tablets for scribes, too important to walk the compound themselves. Occasionally, you're tasked with standing in line for a purification ritual, which mostly means getting splashed with cold water and praying you don't sneeze. It's not glamorous, but it's a role, and roles are survival. By afternoon, you're summoned to the outer courtyard, where people from the city bring offerings, dates, sheep, oils, all part of the temple tax. Babylonian citizens don't just donate out of faith. They're obligated. Every household owes a portion of its goods to the temple. And if they can't pay in kind, they pay in labor, or children, or land. A woman before you sobs quietly as a priest takes her offering a single, small chicken, barely grown. She pleads that it's all she has. The priest marks her with a clay token and sends her away. "She'll owe extra next moon," Nabu whispers. Maybe her son. And now it hits you fully, viscerally. This isn't just a place of faith. It's a state within a state, with its own economy, its own army, and its own system of surveillance. The god may dwell at the temple's core, but the people are the fuel. Marduk doesn't need gold. He needs obedience. And everyone around you, including you, is paying rent to the divine. As the day begins to cool, you're finally given a break, a few stolen minutes, to sit beneath a stone awning where workers gather for barley beer and scraps of dried dates. A boy beside you, no older than 11, tells you he's been here 3 years. "Born into the temple house," he says proudly. "My father was a cook. I'll be a keeper of oils." You nod, but something in you recoils. This boy doesn't know any other life. He doesn't question the structure, the debt, the God. For him, it's not control, it's comfort. But you feel the city tightening around you like a noose made of contracts and clay. Still, you stay quiet. Because this role, however grueling, has kept you from being sold or stabbed or swallowed by the alleys. And just as you think the day is ending, a temple guard approaches and barks your name, your new name, Namtaru. The high scribe wants a word. You rise, legs aching, clay dust coating your skin. Because in Babylon, when the high scribe calls, you go. And what he has to say will change everything. You follow the guard in silence. Past temple courtyards still humming with activity. Past storehouses stacked with amphorae sealed in pitch. past sacred chambers lit with flickering oil lamps, where priests chant under their breath in tongues older than time. At last, you're brought to a small stone chamber lined with shelves, every one of them filled edge to edge with clay tablets. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. This is not a place of worship. This is a place of memory. The man seated at the center of the room does not look like a warrior or a priest. His robe is plain, his hands are ink-stained and calloused from years of stylus work. And yet, the room shifts around him like gravity bends around a star. "Sit," he says without looking up. You do. The guard leaves. The door closes. Silence. The man finally speaks again, eyes still on the tablet he's reading. Amel says you're from nowhere, says you fell from the sky, with no house, no seal, no debt trail, no records, no name in any tablet. He looks up now. His eyes are sharp, measuring. That makes you dangerous. You stammer something about being a traveler, a helper, a worker, anything to sound useful. He raises a hand. "Spare me lies. I've read every lie ever etched in clay. Half the people in this city owe their freedom to a well-crafted fiction." He stands, walks slowly to a shelf, selects a cracked, darkened tablet. This? From the time of King Samsu-Iluna, a land deed, very boring, except it was forged. He sets it down gently. That forgery led to a border dispute. That dispute led to a skirmish. The skirmish turned into a revolt. 30 people died. He taps the tablet once with a fingernail. "From this." You swallow. The room feels smaller now. "You think Babylon is ruled by kings," he says, "or priests, or gods?" He leans forward, voice like thunder buried under stone. "It's ruled by records." You glance around. Every wall in the chamber is crammed with tablets, legal codes, grain receipts, omen reports, death lists, marriage contracts, divorce filings, tax defaults, slave trades, property transfers. And somewhere in this sea of clay, your name or your alias has now been added. "Tell me something, Namtaru," he says, using your new name. "Do you know the weight of a shekel of silver?" You don't. "Do you know the sequence of lunar omens that mark the festival of Akitu?" You shake your head. "Can you tell me what happens if a house collapses and kills the owner's son?" You hesitate. He recites from memory, "Then the son of the builder shall be put to death." That's a real law. From the Code of Hammurabi. You remember reading it once in a textbook. It seemed cruel, abstract. But here, it's not theory. It's policy. "Babylon," he says, "doesn't care what you believe. It cares what you record. And I," he taps his stylus against his palm, "am the one who records it." He moves closer now. "So, do you want to disappear again? Wander the alleys with rats and runners? Or do you want something better?" You ask what he means. "I need a new hand. Someone no one knows. Someone without debts. You'll copy texts, sort records, learn the laws, quiet work, but critical." He pauses. "And dangerous. You try to understand. Why you? Because you're not in the system yet," he says. "Which means you can move in ways others can't. Ask questions. Read things others ignore." He turns and points to a shelf. "Start with those. Tablet 87 through 104. Grain inventories from Borsippa. Then read the omen records from last spring. Something's off. I want to know what." You blink. You're not a scribe. You can't read cuneiform. Not really. But something in his tone says, that doesn't matter. Because in Babylon, everyone is learning or lying. And if you can't do one, you'd better get good at the other. You rise, slowly, and approach the first shelf. The tablets are heavy, rough-edged. ancient, and yet alive, as if every carved wedge and notch still echoes with the voice of the man who pressed it into clay. As you lift one and begin to examine the markings, something strange happens. The city fades. The fear ebbs. You feel focused. The symbols begin to make sense. Because knowledge here isn't a luxury. It's not a game. It's survival. And somehow, you've just stepped into the part of Babylon that truly runs everything, not with swords, but with styluses. Behind every priest's ritual, every king's decree, every soldier's march, there is a scribe. And for now, you are one of them. But be warned, the deeper you read, the more secrets you'll find. And some of them were buried for a reason. The first night passes in silence. You don't sleep. Not really. You lie on a reed mat tucked in the corner of the scribe's archive, listening to the distant hum of Babylon, a city that never truly rests. Even at midnight, there's the thud of sandals, the clatter of carts, the echo of river barges unloading fish and clay. Your dreams are full of cuneiform, symbols swimming in rows, eyes watching from behind stacks of tablets. Morning comes without fanfare. No rooster, no bells. Just a knock on the wall and a scribe with watery eyes telling you to wake up. You've got 10 to copy before midday, he grunts. Don't smudge the corners. You're handed a stylus, a fresh clay tablet, and no instructions. Turns out, Babylon doesn't care that you're untrained. If you're breathing, you're already late. You press the wedge-shaped stylus into soft clay, mimicking the script from an older tablet, a barley record, if you're reading it right. 600 sila of grain from the town of Dilbat, routed through the temple at Borsippa, meant for the brewers. You get 2 lines in before your hand cramps. The symbols blur. Your tablet cracks from uneven pressure. The supervising scribe, a stern woman named Ninlilun, 2 frowns when she sees it. Too wet, she says. And you pressed like a soldier hammering an enemy. Gentle, like pulling silk from a moth. She gives you a fresh slab and walks off. No more words. That's your lesson. By midday, your arms ache. Your tunic clings to your skin. And you've gained a deeper understanding of Babylon's secret language, not cuneiform, but bureaucracy. Here, everything is written, but not everything is true. One tablet claims the temple received 100 jars of oil last moon. Another says 87. A third, written in a different hand, says 110. But the symbols are oddly shaped, the seal unfamiliar. You ask a fellow apprentice, a boy named Ziku, about it. He shrugs. Depends who was watching, he says, or who wanted to look good. So, Babylon runs on fiction. Not wild tales of gods and monsters, but quiet edits and margins. Miscounted sheep, invented repairs, bribes disguised as donations, and every lie hardened into permanent clay. Once it's dry, it's true, Ziku says with a grin. That's the first rule. You begin to see why the high scribe took interest in you. You're not just a hand. You're a pair of eyes unconnected to Babylon's tangled webs of favors, rivalries, and owed silver. Which is why, late that afternoon, he calls you again. You read the Borsippa tablets? You nod. Then tell me, he says, why are there 3 shipments of grain listed from the same farm, but only 2 seals? You pause. You hadn't noticed. Not consciously. But now that he says it, your memory flicks back to tablet 89, with a crooked line in the corner. No seal impression, just a stylus-marked name, Sin Idinam. You repeat it aloud. The scribe's expression doesn't change, but something behind his eyes sharpens. Good, he says. That farm belongs to a temple official. The grain didn't vanish. It walked. You realize what he's implying. Theft, at a state level. And he's using you, the unknown, the outsider, to spot it. because no one is watching your hands. No one suspects you. Yet, he hands you a new stack. This, he says, is how Babylon stays standing. Not the priests, not the soldiers, the people who notice. That night, you copy the tablets by oil lamp, the stylus tapping like rain on stone. Each wedge-shaped impression carries weight. A misspelling can change a law. A cracked tablet can erase a life. You don't know yet what kind of power you've been handed, but it's growing, quietly, one line at a time. And what you uncover next might not just threaten a temple official's grain quota, it might shake the empire itself. You're not a full scribe yet, not even close. But people are starting to notice you. A junior priest stops you in the hallway of the Isagila temple and asks, casually, if you're the one with good eyes. The baker near the ziggurat winks and passes you a bit of sweetened fig bread without asking for coin. And Ninlilun too, the stern scribe supervisor, starts giving you the harder tablets. Not harder to copy, harder to understand. They're filled with lists of temple offerings, daily breakdowns of incense, dates, wine, oil, and animals, oxen, sheep, doves. But more interestingly, they're matched with the names of donors, farmers, merchants, minor officials. And beside some of those names, strange annotations, like withheld 3 sila, or deferred tithe until Ululu, and more than once, double entry, cross-check with Sin Temple. You start to realize these temples aren't just places of worship. They're banks, not like the ones you know. There are no coins, no paper notes, no vaults full of numbered boxes. But there's something even more powerful: trust. And trust, in Babylon, is built with clay. Here's how it works. Let's say a merchant brings 60 jars of sesame oil to the Esagila temple. Instead of lugging it all around the city, he stores it with the temple. In exchange, the priests give him a clay tablet, a receipt. He can use that tablet to pay his taxes, or trade it for grain, or offer it as collateral for a loan. That clay receipt is his money. And where there's money, there's manipulation. You see it in the tablets. Duplicate entries, overstated donations, invented weights, missing records reappearing weeks later, always favoring the same few names. You mention it to Ziku, the apprentice. He laughs. You think temples just talk to the gods? They own half the cattle in the city. They lend silver. They set grain prices. They build the gods' houses and collect rent for living near them. That night, the high scribe Kalamu is his name, though few say it aloud, brings you into a room behind the archive. There's only one tablet on the table. It's old, dusty, but the seal on it makes your stomach drop. It's the seal of the in-priestess of Inanna. You know enough now to understand what that means. That's not just any priestess. That's a divine wife, a woman who speaks for the goddess, whose words carry more weight than most kings. And the tablet? It lists a transaction. She pledged 20 minas of silver to fund a barley distribution for the poor during the last famine. But then, scribbled in a rushed, different hand, silver diverted, used for temple repairs, by order of, and the name is smudged, but you can guess. You look up at Kalamu. He's watching you carefully. This tablet never left this room, he says. The poor never saw a grain of that barley. But the priestess? She thinks they did. She gave her blessing. She sang the songs. The clay lied for her. You ask what you're supposed to do. He doesn't answer. Not directly. He just places another tablet beside it, this one newer. It's an order to the temple treasurer to increase barley taxes on the western farms next season, to recover the shortfall from that very distribution. So not only did the poor go hungry now, the farmers are paying for a gift they never received. Kalamu says nothing more. He doesn't need to. The room feels hot, heavy, like you're not breathing air anymore, but incense and ash. This is Babylon, a city of laws and tablets, but also of rituals and masks. And just like the gods they worship, the people at the top are not always what they seem. Tomorrow, you'll be sent to the temple treasury to copy more records. But now you know what to look for. Because in Babylon, the most dangerous lies aren't whispered in back alleys. They're baked into clay and signed with holy names. The next morning, you walk through a gate of black basalt carved with lions and dragons, stepping into a building that smells nothing like a temple. No incense, no flowers, no sacred smoke. This is the treasury, and the scent here is sharper, earthier, dried ink, fired clay, sweat, and silver. You're led past heavy doors to a room where two scribes are already hunched over a desk stacked with tablets. They don't look up. In the corner, an overseer named Belmuck, N, is grinding a stylus across a clay slab like he's trying to wound it. He doesn't speak to you, just points to an empty seat. You take it. Your task? Simple, in theory. Copy loan contracts, line by line, symbol by symbol. No room for error. No space for questions. The first tablet is dated to the month of Nisanu. A farmer named Kudur had borrowed 1 shekel of silver to purchase oxen seed. The loan was due after the harvest. Interest, 20%. You blink. That's not low. But the second tablet is worse. A widow pledging her house for a half-shekel loan. Due in 30 days. Interest, 33%. You glance around. Nobody reacts. You keep copying. But as the day wears on, the rhythm of the entries starts to feel like a slow drumbeat of despair. Loan, pledge, default, confiscation, repeat. And then, something strange. A tablet that doesn't fit the others. It's from a year prior. The borrower's name is partially scratched out. The pledged collateral is unusual. 1 temple slave, age 12. You stop writing. The line doesn't feel right. Not legally, not morally. You've learned enough to know that temple slaves technically owned by the gods aren't supposed to be traded or pledged like livestock. You show the tablet to Belmuck, N. He snatches it from your hands, reads it, squints, then with terrifying casualness, snaps it in half. The crack echoes. Clay dust falls like sand between his fingers. That one was misfiled, he says. Copy the next. You stare at the broken halves lying in a clay bin just like that. A transaction has ceased to exist. And you realize something. In Babylon, nothing is sacred. Not really. Not if it interferes with profit. You return to your seat. Tablet after tablet, the pattern grows clearer. The temple doesn't just hold religious ceremonies. It lends silver, charges interest, and seizes assets. Land, homes, animals, even people. It doesn't forgive. It compounds. And if the debtor can't pay, a relative pays, or a child, or their freedom. You ask Ziku that night if the king knows about this. He laughs. The king borrows from the temples too, and during the Akitu festival, he has to kneel before the chief priest, not the other way around. It hits you like a blow to the chest. Even the king is a client. The gods might be in heaven, but Babylon's power is stored in ledgers. And those ledgers are written by people like you, or erased by them. So what happens when someone like you, someone watching closely, someone asking too many questions becomes a liability? Ziku gives you a look, not fear, not warning, just a quiet truth. They'll break your tablet too. You sleep badly that night because you're starting to understand something deeper than language or law. In Babylon, the gods take offerings, but the temples take everything else. And tomorrow, you'll be summoned by someone far above Belmuck, someone whose name hasn't appeared on a single tablet you've read. Someone who doesn't need ink to make people disappear. The summons comes at dawn. Not with ceremony, not with trumpets or guards. Just a boy in temple linen, no older than 10, who finds you at the archive. "Come," he says, eyes down. He's waiting. You don't ask who. You already know. You're led through the temple complex, past the courtyards, past the incense burners, past the statue chambers where gods sit in golden silence. Then down, into the foundations. The air grows cooler, thicker. The walls lose their carvings and become smooth, black stone. The boy opens a door. Inside, a room so quiet, you hear your heartbeat. And there he is. The man with no seal, no title chiseled in stone, no tablet with his name. But you've seen his fingerprints, dozens of them, on contracts, bribes, lists of donations, a shadow behind the scribes, behind the priests, behind the lies. He's old, but not weak. His eyes are sharp, amused. "You're the one who reads between the lines," he says without greeting. "Good." He doesn't ask your name, just gestures to a chair. "Tell me, how many tablets do you think lie in the Esagilla archive?" You pause. 10,000, you guess. He smiles. "Triple that. And that's only the temple. The palace has more, the military more. Babylon is clay stacked on clay, words piled higher than towers. And in those words, everything." He leans closer. "But what happens when someone writes the wrong word?" Your mouth is dry. "You correct it?" He chuckles. "You correct it, or you correct them." And just like that, you understand. You're not here to be punished. You're being recruited. Because you noticed the missing seal, the misfiled slave, the interest rates. You're more than a scribe. You're a watcher, a counterweight, or maybe just a new tool. He places a small tablet on the table, freshly inscribed, no seal. It's blank, except for one word in Sumerian. "Observe. This is your new task," he says. "Not to write, not to speak, to watch. And when something breaks the pattern, you write it here." He taps the tablet. "In code. Only I will read it. You take it." It's heavier than it looks. As you rise to leave, he adds one final instruction. Babylon doesn't fall to fire or war. It falls when people stop watching the clay. You return to the archive changed. Not promoted, not protected, but claimed. Your life now belongs to Babylon's silent war, the war behind the chants, behind the statues, behind the harvest festivals. It's not a war of blades. It's a war of truths. And the people who control which truths get written and which ones get baked into silence. Tomorrow, you'll be back at your desk, copying, watching, waiting. Because in Babylon, the most dangerous person isn't the priest, the general, or the king. It's the one holding the stylus and knowing when not to write. Spring arrives in Babylon like a proclamation. The Euphrates swells with meltwater from the north, carrying silt that perfumes the city's air with the scent of renewal. Flower garlands appear at every doorway. People speak in lowered voices about the coming of Akitu, the New Year festival. And for 1 week, Babylon is not ruled by the king. It's ruled by the gods. You've heard whispers of Akitu before, but until now, it was just a ritual on a tablet, a set of processions and offerings, abstract, controlled, ink and symbols. But now, it's alive. And it begins in silence. Not joy, not celebration. On the first day, The high priest of Marduk emerges from the Esagila temple, dressed in linen, ashes on his forehead. He walks to the palace. And there, in front of the entire priesthood and assembled officials, the king kneels. Not symbolically. He falls face down in the dust. You watch this with hundreds of others, merchants, nobles, slaves, packed shoulder to shoulder in the plaza. The priest places his hand on the king's head and begins a prayer older than Babylon itself, spoken in ancient Sumerian. Then he does something shocking. He slaps the king, hard. Gasps ripple through the crowd. He slaps him again and again, until the king's eyes water, until he stammers the words, "I have not ruled unjustly. I have not oppressed the weak." It's a script, a litany, but it feels real. And now you understand. This isn't a punishment. It's purification. Because for Babylon to survive another year, the king must be emptied, humbled, brought low before the god Marduk, so that he may rise again. Afterward, the king is taken away in silence. He'll return later, reborn. But for now, Babylon belongs to the gods, and the city transforms. You see it everywhere. The streets are washed and perfumed with myrrh. Statues of gods are carried on great gilded barges down the Euphrates. Children wear clay amulets. Dancers with painted eyes twirl in the temples. Bread and beer flow freely. But beneath the pageantry, there's something darker. Power is being reset. Debt records are reviewed. Some are canceled, others are doubled. Prisoners are released a gesture of mercy. But new arrests take their place, especially those accused of insulting the gods or speaking falsely about grain weights, crimes that might in another season be ignored. Ziku explains it with a shrug. Akitu is a mirror. It reflects what Babylon wants to believe it is. And what does Babylon believe? That the gods speak through oracles, that the king rules with Marduk's blessing, that when evil builds up, it can be wiped clean, with ritual, with prayer, with blood. You ask if people really believe it. He grins. Does it matter? The festival works. And it does. For a few days, rich and poor walk side by side. Enemies share bread. There's laughter, music, revelry. But the scribes? We're still watching. Because amid the joy, orders are still given. Records are still copied. Silver is still counted. And behind the ritual slaps, behind the parade drums and sacred chants, the real gods of Babylon law, grain, debt, and memory never stop working. On the final day, the king returns. He stands atop the great ziggurat, newly bathed, wearing a crown of woven reeds. The people cheer. Marduk has forgiven him. Order is restored. But you've seen what lies underneath. You've read the ledgers. You know which debts were quietly erased, which names vanished from tablets, and which ones were written in bold, fresh ink. Akitu may cleanse the king, but it doesn't cleanse the clay. Night falls over Babylon like a velvet curtain embroidered with stars. From your rooftop perch, the city looks almost peaceful. The glow of oil lamps flickers in alleyways. A breeze from the Euphrates carries the scent of clay and cinnamon. Somewhere nearby, a girl hums a lullaby older than any kingdom. But above all of it, the sky. It stretches endlessly over the city, glittering with constellations that no modern stargazer would recognize. In Babylon, astronomy is not a hobby. It's power. And tonight, you've been invited to the ziggurat, the seven-tiered temple tower rising from the center of the Esagila complex. It's not for prayer, not this time. It's for observation. Ziku leads you by torchlight up the narrow steps that spiral the tower like a serpent. The air thins with each level, and by the time you reach the summit, The noise of the city has vanished. Only silence and stars. Waiting there is a man wrapped in dark wool, his beard tied in a double braid. He introduces himself simply as Nabu, Arab scribe of the stars. He offers you a wax tablet. Copy what I say, he instructs without ceremony, and do not speak unless I ask. You nod. For the next hour, he murmurs numbers, dates, positions of Venus, Jupiter, and the moon. Their brightness, their movement, their angle against the rising of the Pleiades. Everything is measured. Nothing is guessed. And yet, what you are witnessing isn't just science, it's divination. These gods do not speak in words, Nabu-Arib finally explains, eyes still fixed on the eastern horizon. They speak in light. To understand Babylon's future, you must read the sky. He shows you a clay tablet from years ago. It speaks of a lunar eclipse, followed by famine. And it came to pass, he says, just as the stars said. You want to ask if he really believes that, but you don't. Because something deeper is happening here. This isn't superstition. This is a system, ancient, precise, a blend of mathematics, myth, and political calculus. Each star's flicker, each planet's delay, becomes a sentence in a language only a handful can read. And those readers, they are the power behind the throne. You copy another sequence of numbers as Nabu-Rib frowns. Venus is late, he mutters, 3 days behind. You ask what it means. He doesn't answer. Instead, he tells you to record it. The omens speak slowly, he says. But they always speak. As you descend from the ziggurat hours later, something clicks into place. Babylon's rulers don't just rely on soldiers and scribes. They rely on prophecy. Not because they believe the gods are watching, but because the people do. And if the stars say war is coming, the people prepare. If the stars predict famine, grain prices rise. And if the stars name a bad omen for the king, he may not stay king for long. You begin to understand how dangerous a miscalculation here can be. One incorrect eclipse, one misaligned conjunction, and Babylon's entire hierarchy might shake. Back in your chamber, you stare at the stars a little longer, trying to see what Nabu-Rib sees. But all you glimpse are patterns you can't yet read. The sky is speaking. You just haven't learned how to listen yet. And tomorrow, you'll learn why one of those omens has started circulating in whispers among the priests and merchants alike. A sign that even the mighty towers of Babylon might not stand forever. The whispers begin the next morning. Not among the poor, not even among the slaves. Among the priests, the market scribes, the grain recorders. And that's how you know something's wrong. It's just one word. Ulmu. It means peace in Akkadian. But spoken like this, in low tones, with downcast eyes, it means the opposite. You spot it first on a tablet half buried in a pile of wax drafts, a fragment of a lunar omen recorded by one of the apprentices. If the moon is obscured on the 14th day and reappears before the third watch, Ulmu will not come to the land. You stare at it, then check the calendar. The eclipse already happened. You race to the upper floors of the archive. There it is, a sealed clay tablet marked urgent. No royal seal, only the temple's inside. Confirmation. The moon was late to rise. The stars flickered. A minor deviation in Venus's course, minor by the numbers, but major to Babylon. Because omens like this have patterns, cycles. And this one matches a previous event from nearly 200 years ago. A year remembered for grain rot, river flooding, and Worsi coup that toppled a king. You take the tablet to Ziku. He reads it in silence, then rubs his beard. It's happening again, he says. You ask, Do we warn someone? He laughs. Warn who? Because omens in Babylon don't warn, they unfold. They invite interpretation, and interpretation is power. Already, the priests have started spinning it. To the nobles, the eclipse is a sign the king must fast, that his pride has angered Marduk. To the army, the signs say danger comes from the west. To the merchants, the gods demand offerings, or silver will turn to dust. Everyone hears what they fear most. And as the panic spreads, you see what it means to live in a city where fate is written in the sky. Prices shift overnight. Grain hoarders double their rates. The temple markets overflow with new gifts from terrified citizens hoping to win divine favor. Criminals begin to vanish not from trial, but from the streets. And most telling of all, the king disappears from view. Ziku murmurs, "He's in the tower." You don't ask which one. You don't need to. Because in Babylon, when the stars go dark, the ruler climbs the steps of the great ziggurat and waits alone for Marduk to speak. You begin to wonder if he ever does, or if the silence that greets him is part of the ritual, the final lesson of kingship. You rule the land, but not the sky. The next day, the palace issues a proclamation. The scribes are to prepare new tablets. Calendars are to be adjusted. Sacrifices doubled. The next full moon declared sacred. You see the fear in the lines of every command, not of invasion, not of rebellion, but of misreading the stars. Because if the gods are angry and you guess wrong about why, Babylon burns. And soon, another kind of omen begins to appear. Not in the sky, but on the walls. Symbols scratched at night. Marks you recognize from old Akkadian curses. Crooked stars. The blood triangle. Someone is hoping Babylon will fall. Someone is helping the omens come true. And in the next chapter, you'll meet the man whose job it is to find them and silence them before the eclipse spreads from the heavens to the throne itself. You don't find him. He finds you. It's just after dusk. You're returning from the archives, arms full of tablets wrapped in linen. The alley between the temple wall and the scribe quarter is unusually quiet. No children chasing goats. No merchants unloading barley. Just the echo of your own footsteps. Then a voice. Low. Controlled. Right behind you. Walk with me. You don't turn. Something tells you not to. He steps beside you. You catch only glimpses: worn sandals, a cloak of dark wool, the glint of a bronze amulet shaped like a lion's head. No formal seal, no title. And yet every muscle in your body tightens. Because whoever he is, he answers to no one. The king reads your transcriptions, he says. You copy accurately. It's not a compliment, it's a warning. You nod, staying quiet. There are names missing from the latest omen registry, he continues. Names of those spreading false interpretations. You tell him you don't know about that. He doesn't blink. That's why we're walking. You realize this is a test, not of your loyalty, of your usefulness. He leads you through a side door into a chamber beneath the temple. No one stops him. No one even looks. That's how you know this goes deeper than you thought. Inside, a map of the city, scratched into a slab of dark stone. A dozen clay markers placed on key points. The grain warehouse, the east gate, the astrologer's quarter, the riverside shrine. Beside each marker, a name. Some are circled in red ink. Others are crossed out. He points to one. Spreads fear. Tells merchants the gods will burn their ships unless they pay him silver. Another writes omens not seen, claims dreams of Marduk. Another carved curses on the temple walls. You ask what happens to them. He finally looks at you. Nothing, he says. Then, if we do our job. Because in Babylon, truth isn't enough. Order must be preserved. So this man, this enforcer, this shadow of the king, doesn't just punish liars. He prevents collapse, quietly, surgically. A merchant disappears. A priest suddenly confesses and retires. A suspicious fire in the slums. That's his work. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't threaten. He just watches. You understand, he says as he turns to go. If the people believe the omens, they act. If they act, we lose control. And then, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to. The room smells of cold clay and old incense. But beneath it, something else lingers, the scent of power maintained by fear. You're told to leave by a different door. Outside, the street looks the same as before, but nothing feels the same. You now understand. Babylon doesn't run on faith. It runs on certainty. And when the sky goes dark and people start whispering, someone must be there in the shadows to remind them that the gods may rule the heavens, but Babylon still belongs to the king. In the next chapter, you'll witness what happens when even the king begins to doubt, and the difference between belief and control starts to crack like baked clay beneath the desert sun. The palace is silent, too silent. No flute music, no chatter from courtiers, no perfume sellers loitering near the gate, just the steady hum of cicadas and the occasional clink of bronze armor as guards pace the inner courtyard. It's the kind of silence that happens only when a king is afraid. You've been summoned, not as a scribe, not as a servant, but as a witness. The man who brings you is different from the enforcer. Younger, nervous, high cheekbones, trembling fingers. He doesn't introduce himself. He just says, "The king wants to see the tablet." You hesitate. Which one? The omen. He means the eclipse tablet, the one copied by Nabu-Arib, the one that said, Ulmu would not come to the land. You're ushered into the inner sanctum of the palace, past thick cedar doors and walls, carved with images of lions trampling enemies underfoot. The palace smells like myrrh, dust, and sweat. And then you see him, the king, not on a throne, not wearing a crown. He sits on a low stone bench in a chamber with no windows, only a single oil lamp casting long shadows across his face. He looks tired, not old, but aged by the weight of something heavier than time. He gestures to the tablet you carry. You place it in his hands. His eyes scan the symbols slowly. He knows how to read, few kings do, and his lips move with each syllable. You expect a question, a command. Instead, he just speaks, quietly. They wrote the same omen during the year of the locusts, he says. My grandfather told me the stories. Starving mothers, dead cattle, blood in the river. He swore he saw the sky turn red. He looks up at you. Tell me, he asks, do you believe in omens? You hesitate. If you say no, you risk offending his belief. If you say yes, you affirm his greatest fear. So you offer a third path. I believe in the power of those who read them. He considers this, then laughs softly. That's the problem, isn't it? He says. The stars don't kill kings, people do. When they believe the stars have turned against them. He rises. And for a moment, just a moment, he doesn't look like a king at all. He looks like a man at the edge of a cliff. You realize what he's truly afraid of. It's not the gods. It's being blamed for their silence. I've fasted. I've bathed in cedar oil. I've offered bulls at the gate of Ishtar, he says. Still, they whisper. You know the whispers he means. The priests murmuring that Marduk is displeased. The scribes spreading rumors of portents. The merchants praying to Shamash instead. I need something they can't question, he says. Then he turns to you, his voice low, deadly. Write a new tablet. You blink. What? Same signs. Different interpretation. Tell them the eclipse means a harvest surge. That Venus late is a sign of protection. The gods are blessing us, not cursing. You open your mouth, but no words come out. You'll do it, he says. And if you're clever, you'll make it sound older than me. And just like that, the room feels colder. Because now, you're not just a witness to history. You're being asked to rewrite it. What do? You could tell the truth, risk chaos. Or you could lie, preserve the city. But whose truth is this, really? The king looks at you one last time, then turns away. By tomorrow, he says. You leave the palace with the weight of Babylon on your shoulders and the night sky above you, bright with stars that no longer feel like friends. Because in the next chapter, you'll face a question every civilization must answer. When the heavens go silent, who speaks for the gods? You don't sleep. How could you? The king has given you a task that could alter the fate of an empire, forge a new omen, one that rewrites the will of the gods. You're not just copying a tablet now. You're creating one. And you're doing it with clay. Wet, cold, heavy clay. The kind that pulls at your fingers like it knows what you're doing is wrong. The chamber is small. Just you, a lamp, and 2 blank tablets. You sit cross-legged on the floor, stylus trembling in your hand. Ziku doesn't know. The enforcer doesn't know. Only the king. You stare at the original eclipse tablet, its warning sharp and unflinching. If the moon is obscured on the 14th night and shines before the 3rd watch, pestilence and rebellion will strike the land. And now you must write. If the moon hides herself and returns swiftly, the gods are guarding the city from unseen threats. Ulmu will spread like the floodwaters in spring. It sounds almost believable. Because in Babylon, the truth doesn't just live in the sky. It lives in how you interpret the sky. You work slowly, carefully. You mimic the hand of an older scribe, slight tremor, thicker lines. You add artificial wear at the corners. You even mark the year as one that predates the current reign. A rediscovered omen, one lost in a flood. And for all your effort, you feel sick. Because deep down, you know this is no ordinary forgery. It's not just a lie to the people. It's a lie to the gods. You bake the clay by dawn. Not in the palace kiln, too dangerous. You use a merchant's oven near the river. You tell him it's a dedication tablet for a personal shrine. He doesn't ask questions. You return to the palace. Deliver it to the same trembling official who first summoned you. He doesn't thank you. He just takes it with both hands, reverently, as if it really did fall from the stars. Later that day, the proclamation goes out. A lost tablet has been found. A sign from the gods. A symbol of peace. By nightfall, bells ring in the temple of Marduk. Offerings double. Priests chant verses tailored to the new omen. Even the merchants relax. The price of grain drops. A week later, the king appears at the temple gate and kneels, not before the gods, but before the people. He thanks them for their loyalty. He credits the gods for their mercy. He orders public feast to celebrate the turning of the stars. And Babylon breathes again. But you watch from a shadowed corner of the crowd. You see the faces. You hear the joy. And you feel nothing, because you know it's all based on a lie that may have saved thousands, a lie that might echo for centuries, a lie you made with your own hand. Later that night, Ziku finds you in the archive. He doesn't say anything for a long time. Then, the stars speak, but they speak slowly. You nod, and he adds, faster than kings, slower than clay. You think he knows. You don't know how. But in Babylon, knowledge is never clean. It gathers like dust, clinging to walls, to breath, to thought. You leave the tablet in the archive's deepest vault, where others like it sleep, some true, some false, all treated with the same sacred awe. In the next chapter, Babylon will face something even more dangerous than omens: memory. And you'll witness what happens when the city forgets what was real and starts believing the lie. It starts innocently. A young apprentice scribe, barely 12 summers old, finds the rediscovered tablet while reorganizing the archive. He brings it to his teacher, eyes wide. "Did you know the gods protected us from the red eclipse?" he asks. The teacher nods solemnly. "Yes, a sign of favor. It's written." That's all it takes. A conversation, a nod, a single line spoken as if it had always been true. Because in Babylon, memory is not carved in stone. It is baked in clay, and clay, once hardened, does not question itself. The priests begin citing the tablet in new hymns. It's referenced in a seasonal festival that never existed before. The story changes. The gods weren't warning Babylon. They were shielding it. From what? It doesn't matter. Fear, pestilence, famine, the specific danger fades. The promise remains, and it spreads like a perfume sweet, subtle, impossible to contain. You try to keep your distance, but it haunts you. You see a statue of Shamash draped in blue cloth, a color now associated with eclipse protection, a tradition that didn't exist 2 weeks ago. You hear a mother whisper the omen's message to calm her crying child. You walk past a wall and see it carved in cuneiform, bold as prophecy. The gods hid the moon to shield us. Your words, your lie, now engraved into the bones of the city. Ziku notices too. He finds you in the archive late one night, where you've been reviewing older omens, the real ones, trying to remember what Babylon actually believed before the eclipse. "You can't unbake clay," he says. You look up. He shrugs. "I'm not angry. I've written worse. We all have." You ask him if he's ever regretted it. Ziku doesn't answer right away. He just walks to the shelf, pulls down a tablet cracked at the corner, and hands it to you. It's dated 30 years ago. It claims a comet was a sign that a queen's child would become king. That child died in infancy. "I wrote that one," Ziku says. And then softer, "People needed hope." You realize the deeper truth of Babylon. The scribes and priests don't record the future. They record the feeling of the present, and they make sure it survives. But that survival has a cost. One morning, you hear the bells of Marduk again. Another omen, another proclamation. A second tablet has been found. This one mentions a sacred star alignment that supposedly blessed the harvest. It's your handwriting, but you didn't write it. Someone copied your style, forged the forge. Now, the lie has taken a life of its own. It's spreading through the archive like rot in a grain store. And suddenly, the question isn't whether Babylon believes the truth. It's whether Babylon ever really cared. In the next chapter, you'll see how the greatest threat to the city isn't war or plague or divine punishment. It's forgetting the difference between story and scripture. At first, it's subtle. A court astrologer requests a transcript of the sacred star alignment tablet for review. A day later, the chief steward of grain shipments adjusts the harvest schedule to match the alignment's dates. 3 days later, the military calendar shifts too. Warriors are told not to march on days when Venus is visible at dawn, to honor the protection of the goddess. None of this is real, but it's written, and that's enough. Because in Babylon, a line on a tablet doesn't just say what is true, it becomes true. The city's rituals change. The king's court schedules ceremonies to coincide with signs that were never signs. Entire supply chains are reoriented to appease a pattern in the sky that no one questioned before this month. And each time someone raises a brow or hesitates, they're handed a clay tablet. They read the cuneiform, they see the royal seal, and they nod. You watch it all happen like a man walking through a dream he didn't ask for. A city reordering itself around an invented omen. A whisper calcifying into law. You consider leaving, packing up, disappearing into the countryside, letting the lie become someone else's burden. But Ziku stops you. You're part of it now, he says simply. You don't argue, because you know he's right. This myth that sprouted from desperation is now policy. And Babylon doesn't just run on bricks and barley. It runs on belief. Soon, the temples begin offering eclipse blessings in exchange for silver. Midwives recite the tablet's phrases when a baby is born during a full moon. The omen is taught to new scribes as an ancient truth. And then, one afternoon, you hear something that freezes you to your core. Two children, playing in a narrow alley. One says to the other, "You can't cross the line, that's when the gods hid the moon to protect Babylon." The other responds, "My mother says they'll hide it again if we're good." They laugh. And you don't, because now the lie is a game, passed between the innocent like a coin. You walk the city in a daze, past priests invoking your tablet, past walls painted with murals of the gods hiding the moon behind their hand. And then you see a new inscription. Just a single line, carved into fresh brick at the entrance of a school. Truth is what survives the kiln. You stop, stare, because the kiln is where clay hardens, where stories become permanent. And in Babylon, that permanence is more powerful than memory. You think about what this means for history, for the city, for yourself. But you don't have long to think. Because in the next chapter, the lie is about to be challenged by something real. It begins with a flicker, a strange shimmer in the night sky. At first, no one panics. Babylon has seen comets before they are omens, yes, but they pass. The city has tablets for them, rituals, responses. But this one doesn't pass. It grows. Night by night, it burns brighter, stretching a tail of flame across the heavens. It's too early for a seasonal sign, too fast for a planet, too still to be anything natural. The people start to murmur. They gather at temple courtyards and peer into the sky with eyes full of fear. A comet this bright? In this month? It isn't in any omen they know. And worse, it contradicts the one you wrote. Your false tablet says this season brings peace, a shield over Babylon, celestial protection. But now the sky is shouting a different story. And in Babylon, that's a problem. The priests scramble. The king's astronomers wake every hour to record the comet's movement. You're summoned by name. Not just as a scribe, but as the man who preserved the sacred star alignment. They want answers. What does this mean? What should they do? You stare at the clay tablets stacked on the table before you. One by one, the lines blur. You can't tell anymore which ones were true and which ones were made up. And you realize no one else can either. Babylon has woven the lie so deep into its story that it can't untangle the thread now, even when the sky turns hostile. So they do what Babylon always does. They double down. The high priests declare the comet a clarification of your original omen, a deeper blessing, a divine signal of transition, not danger. New rituals are ordered. Silver bowls are filled with sacred oil and placed on rooftops. Children are bathed by moonlight. Even the temple goats are walked in circles, just in case the gods are watching more closely. You want to scream. You want to tell them no. This is real. This is what we should have feared. This is not part of the story. But no one wants to hear that. In Babylon, truth is not what happens. Truth is what's already written. So the city throws a festival instead. They call it the Comet of Renewal, and the people dance beneath the fire-tailed sky. You stand in the crowd, watching dancers spin in robes dyed with starlight patterns, and you wonder, if a lie is believed by an entire city, written into stone, painted on walls, whispered by mothers to children, is it still a lie? Or has it become something else? But you don't get to answer, because the comet's arrival marks only the beginning. The next morning, the river floods early. The Euphrates breaks its banks. Crops near the southern canals drown. Then, merchants from the east arrive breathless plague in a border town. Not just sickness, collapse, panic. The court tries to contain the news. But Babylon is a city of letters, and words travel faster than water. You know what's coming next. The people who believe the comet was protection now believe it was punishment. And the only thing more dangerous than a city built on a lie is one that realizes it. In the next chapter, Babylon will begin to unravel, and you'll be standing at the center. It happens slowly then, all at once. The Euphrates stays swollen. Weeks pass. The fields remain drowned. Grain stores begin to rot. Rats multiply in the alleyways, and with them, disease. But the comet? Still in the sky, still burning, still watching. The people begin to whisper. The eclipse was a shield, they said. The comet was renewal, they said. But now, the children are coughing. Now the river stinks. Now the moon has gone red again, not from an eclipse, but from smoke. Whole sections of the city are burning their waste to stop the flies. The same priests who once sang your omen now avoid eye contact when they pass you in the street. Some quietly chip away at inscriptions, scrub walls, bury tablets. Not enough to erase the lie, just enough to deny it was ever theirs. And then one morning, you walk past the school, the one where the tablet was quoted at the entrance. The inscription's gone, smashed, replaced by something shorter. One word. Remember. Ziku finds you sitting by the canal that night, staring into the floodwaters. I told you, he says, lowering himself beside you. You can't unbake clay, but you're not listening. Because you're watching a group of children playing in the mud. They're drawing symbols with sticks, not cuneiform, just pretend writing, a mockery of meaning. But you recognize something in it. Your lie. It spread beyond adults, beyond priests, beyond scribes. It lives in play, in folk song, in gossip. It's not just written, it's felt. And that's when the backlash begins. One temple blames another for mistranslating the signs. Fights break out between astrologers. A junior priest is beaten after repeating the sacred comet hymn, accused of inviting disaster. In the southern district, a mob burns an archive. They say the tablets brought this fate. You rush there the next morning. Blackened clay litters the floor, still warm. Your own tablet, the sacred star alignment, is missing. Stolen? Destroyed? You'll never know. All you see is the soot and the silence. Babylon has turned against its words, but it doesn't stop writing them. That's the thing. Even now, amid plague and flood and fire, new tablets are being pressed, new omens scratched into clay. Now they say the comet is punishment. Now the eclipse was a warning. Now your lie is being rewritten. It's not that Babylon rejects the myth. It just reshapes it. You find Ziku again and ask him if he regrets it, all the tablets, all the interpretations. He doesn't answer right away. Then he says, Babylon doesn't care what's true. Babylon cares what works. The comet fades. The waters recede. But something in the city is broken. Not the walls, not the temples, the trust. In the next chapter, Babylon will face its final test. Because when a city loses faith in its own stories, there's nothing left to hold it together. You'd think a city built on stories would crumble quickly when the stories collapse. But Babylon doesn't fall in a scream. It drifts. The floodwaters recede, but the damage remains. Food is scarce. Trade slows. Disease lingers like smoke that won't rise. The comet finally vanishes from the sky, but it takes something with it when it goes. Certainty. The scribes still show up to work. The priests still chant. The markets reopen, but no one believes anymore. They nod, they bow, they write what they're told. But you see it in their eyes. Doubt. And that's worse than fear. Because fear can be managed, ritualized, traded. But doubt? Doubt is contagious. It infects the archives first. Scribes begin quietly reviewing older tablets, cross-referencing dates, comparing omens, squinting at inconsistencies. You're called to review a particularly troublesome one. A lunar omen that contradicts the very tablet you found weeks ago. A younger scribe stares at you, eyes searching. "So which is true?" she asks. You don't answer. Because truth in Babylon was never a pillar. It was a curtain. And now it's fraying. The king's court gets nervous. A new law is passed. No tablet older than 50 years may be cited in official prophecy. The archive is purged. Dozens of clay shelves cleared overnight. Ziku weeps as he watches students crush tablets beneath heavy stone rollers. "That was poetry," he murmurs. "Gone." You try to tell yourself it's just clay, just dust and wedges. But you know it's more. You know that history only exists because someone cared enough to record it. And now, no one trusts the record. Temples argue over which tablets to keep. Some begin burning their own archives, afraid of being caught with heresy in their stacks. Others simply rewrite older tablets with fresh dates, claiming divine clarity. The gods didn't lie. They insist we misread them. So the words change. Again, a comet becomes a curse. An eclipse becomes a reckoning. And your own name, once whispered with respect for your discovery, now floats in rumors like smoke. He was the first. He tricked the gods. He opened the door. No one accuses you directly. Not yet. But you know the pattern. In Babylon, blame is just another story. And someone always gets written into it. In the next chapter, you'll face the consequences of myth-making, not in metaphor, but in flesh and fire. Because when the gods stop talking, people start shouting instead. The temple bells don't ring at dawn. No chants echo through the courtyards. The altars stand cold, their offerings untouched. You step into the morning light, and Babylon feels wrong, as if the whole city forgot how to breathe. Ziku finds you before the sun clears the rooftops. "They're not speaking," he says. You know who he means. The priests have fasted, prayed, cut open doves, burned resin, watched the stars, and received nothing. No signs, no dreams, no patterns in oil or smoke. The gods, it seems, have fallen silent. And in Babylon, that silence is louder than war. By mid-morning, people are flooding the temple gates, mothers carrying sick children, farmers clutching ruined barley, soldiers hoping for guidance before the next campaign. But the priests just stand there, waiting for a sign that doesn't come. You hear someone whisper it behind you. "We broke it." The fear spreads like ink dropped in water. Merchants shutter their stalls. Dogs howl without reason. And then a scream. In the eastern square, Someone has smashed a statue of Nabu god of writing, of wisdom, of truth. The head lies cracked on the steps, eyes blind. No one moves to clean it. You're summoned to the archives. Not by the king, not by a priest, by a crowd. They drag you to the Hall of Tablets, force you to read aloud the omen you found. Your voice shakes as you speak the words. And when you finish, the room stays silent. Until someone asks, "Did you write this?" You could lie. You could say it was copied. You could say it came from the stars, the dreams, the gods. But in that moment, you're tired, and you say nothing. And that's enough. Because silence, now, is confession. You expect punishment, banishment, imprisonment, worse. But instead, they just leave you there. One by one, they file out. No verdict, no shouts, just retreat. Because Babylon has lost something more precious than certainty. It has lost the desire to know. Ziku stands with you long after the room empties. They don't need justice, he says. They need a new story. And that's when you understand. You won't be punished for the lie. You'll be forgotten with it. Because when gods go silent, people don't ask who lied. They ask, who will tell us what to believe next? In the next chapter, Babylon will find a new myth. But you may not be part of it. The archives close their gates the next morning. No announcement. No explanation. Just shutters drawn, doors barred, seals pressed into the soft wax of silence. The scribes disperse. The tablets lie untouched. Even Ziku stops coming. You linger at first, out of habit, touching shelves that once held the weight of kings and gods, reading fragments you once knew by heart. But the air feels stale now, as if the words can no longer breathe without belief. And then comes the cart. 2 temple officials, a guard, and a small wooden cart. They begin collecting tablets. No system, no care, just armfuls swept into sacks. You step forward to protest, but the guard blocks your way. These will be stored, one of the officials says, not looking at you. Where? He doesn't answer. You watch as centuries of memory disappear into burlap. Not destroyed, not quite, but buried. That's how Babylon handles embarrassment. Not with fire, with dust. Later, you find Ziku sitting by the broken statue of Nabu, the scribe god whose face now stares sideways at the sky. He looks smaller somehow, older. We were always supposed to be invisible, he says quietly. The best scribes never left fingerprints. And yet, here you are, smudged across an entire era. You ask him if the story, the one you forged, will survive. Ziku shrugs. Not the tablet, not your name, but the shape of it, the fear, the hunger for certainty. He nods. That will outlive both of us. You spend your last night in the city on the ziggurat steps, watching the stars that once meant something. They still shine, still turn, still pulse with secret logic. But no one's watching anymore. Down below, the priests still chant. The king still sits on his throne. Babylon still calls itself eternal. But you know better now. A city doesn't live in its bricks. It lives in its stories. And when those stories break, the city learns to forget. In the next chapter, Babylon will write a new truth. And you'll become just another whisper beneath the clay. You leave the city quietly. No exile, no procession, no judgment. Just footsteps on a dusty road that was once lined with tribute, now overgrown and cracked with age. No one stops you, because no one cares. Not anymore. Babylon has moved on. Not forward, just sideways, into a new myth, a new omen, A new tablet pressed with fresh names. And yours? Gone. You check. Days later, when you pass through a minor temple scriptorium, you ask if they've seen the tablet, the one that changed everything. The priest narrows his eyes. What tablet? You describe it. The omen, the comet, the eclipse. He shrugs. Old stories. He motions to a shelf of rewritten versions, new interpretations, now more politically useful, now more aligned with the court's needs, and more importantly, now missing you. Your authorship, your voice, your sin, scrubbed clean. A new scribe has taken credit, or no one has. It doesn't matter, because the words survive, but the author doesn't. That's Babylon's real genius. It never needs to punish a lie. It just replaces the liar. You travel for a time, to the north, where the Akkadian tongue still clings to the edges of old clay, to smaller villages where myths are still traded in song. You hear whispers of Babylon's gods, of omens, of signs. Your tablet lives on, fractured into a dozen retellings, none of them accurate, all of them believed. In one version, the comet was a dragon. In another, it was the Eye of Marduk. In a third, it was a gift, a second son to guide the lost. You realize something strange. The lie you told? It's becoming true. Not factually, not historically, but emotionally. People believe because they need to. They shape the world with that need. And in doing so, they shape you. You become a character in your own story. A prophet, a traitor, a fool, a ghost. And none of it is really you. But then again, neither was the lie. You write again, eventually. Not omens, just reflections, scratched onto clay shards, buried in soft earth. No titles, no name, because now you understand the real weight of Babylon. Not in its towers, not in its ziggurats, not even in its gods, but in this. To write something down is to let it be misunderstood forever. And yet we still do it, because even the most broken story is better than silence. In the next chapter, Babylon's walls will fall. But its stories? They will rise again. Years pass. You return to Babylon not because you must, but because some part of you never really left. The city still stands. The Ishtar Gate still glows in blue glazed brick. The ziggurat still claws at the sky. The Euphrates still splits the city in two like a lifeline. From a distance, nothing has changed. But step inside, and you feel it. A weight, a hollowness, like music still playing after the dancers are gone. The markets still bustle, but the trades are simpler. Spices instead of ideas, metal instead of meaning. The talk is of crops and caravans, not stars or omens. You visit the temple, once the city's brain. Now, it's just a mouth. Repeating the same safe prayers, burning the same oils, scribbling the same copied tablets, again and again. The scribes no longer interpret, they transcribe. You recognize one of the young priests, a boy who once studied under Ziku. His eyes were bright then, full of questions. Now, flat, focused. He nods as you pass, but doesn't recognize you, or pretends not to. You stop by the archives. They're cleaner than you remember. Smaller, too. Entire shelves missing. Not destroyed, just removed, quietly, efficiently. The uncomfortable bits pruned like dead branches from a sacred tree. No sign of your old tablet. But oddly, your handwriting survives. You spot it in the margins of another scribe's work annotations you once made about the movement of Venus. Uncredited, absorbed. That's how Babylon remembers. Not through monuments, but through erasure. Outside, a teacher recites the Epic of Gilgamesh to a cluster of children. He speaks with rhythm, with passion. But when Gilgamesh weeps for Enkidu, the children giggle. Not because they're cruel, but because they don't understand anymore. The words remain. The weight is gone. And this, more than anything else, is the city's final death. Babylon still stands, but it no longer means anything. And meaning was always what kept the bricks together. In the next chapter, someone will come to take those bricks. They will not know the stories behind them, only that they're useful. It starts with a caravan. Not traders, not pilgrims, soldiers. From the west, wearing iron, speaking Aramaic, carrying scrolls stamped with seals you've never seen. The new rulers don't sack the city, they study it, measure it, map it, make inventories of temple wealth and agricultural yields. They don't burn Babylon to the ground. They just redefine it. You're there when they rename the temple quarters. The new governor, a bearded man with clean hands and calculating eyes, proclaims that the Temple of Marduk will now also honor a foreign god whose name you can't pronounce. The statues are left in place, but the meanings behind them shift. One priest objects. Quietly, he's replaced the next day. No explanation. Just a new man in his robes, saying the same words, but with different intent. Babylon is being translated. And in translation, it is losing itself. The ziggurat becomes a garrison tower. The libraries become tax offices. The scribes, those who remain, are tasked not with preserving the past, but calculating harvest yields and troop provisions. The ink is the same. The meaning is not. You speak with a young clerk one evening. He's copying what used to be a star chart. It's for navigation now, he says, shrugging. To plan campaigns, not ceremonies. He doesn't know that each symbol once meant life, death, eternity. He just knows it helps them march straighter. Ziku is gone. You don't know where. His name isn't even whispered. And you realize something chilling. You've outlived the world you belong to. Not in years, but in purpose. You watch as the sacred rivers are rechanneled for military transport. As the temple storehouses become armories, as ancient laws are rewritten with new seals and foreign names, no rebellion comes, no glorious last stand, just reassignment. The clay that once recorded dreams now tallies barley. The hands that once wrote myths now calculate tax. The gods don't fall, they're just repurposed. In the next chapter, Babylon will become a name in someone else's story, and the city of gods and stars will become a footnote. Years pass again. And Babylon, once the eye of the world, becomes background. Its towers still rise, but no one looks up anymore. The Ishtar Gate fades. The blues, once brilliant as heaven, are chipped, sun-faded, graffitied by soldiers who don't know the goddess for whom it was named. You watch weeds sprout in sacred courtyards. A child kicks a ball across the broken floor of what was once a room of kings. The temples are sealed now. Some say it's to protect them. Others say it's because there's nothing left inside. No incense, no hymns, no reason. Even the ziggurat, the stairway to the heavens, has lost its shape. The top levels are gone, collapsed. Its bricks carted away by villagers to build their own homes, walls, ovens. Stone, after all, is useful. The stars haven't changed, but there's no one left to read them. Once, people would look up and see stories. Now, they just see weather. You live outside the walls now, in a little hut near a canal choked with silt. Sometimes farmers stop by to ask if you remember how the water once flowed, if you can read the old markers carved into the banks. You tell them what you can, They thank you with bread, sometimes fish. You write in clay still, but it's not for archives. Just loose thoughts, fragments, nothing formal. You bury them near the river, under the roots of a fig tree. Not because you think anyone will find them, but because you can't bear to let the words vanish entirely. One night, a boy visits. He's maybe 12, curious, hungry, in a different way. He asks what Babylon was. You tell him about the towers, the gods, the stars, the names. You try to explain the weight of a lie and the cost of a story. He listens, eyes wide. When you're done, he frowns. But who built it all? You smile. No one remembers. And that's the truth. In the next chapter, Babylon will fall silent completely. Not from conquest, but because no one is left to speak its language. The clay cracks with heat now, not fire from altars, just the sun. Relentless, indifferent. The bricks of Babylon are dusting away, not all at once, not with drama, but flake by flake, the way parchment decays in silence. One wall falls during a storm. No one rebuilds it. Another crumbles beneath the roots of a fig tree, the same tree beneath which you buried your last writings. No one notices. And yet, strangely, something begins. Foreigners arrive, not soldiers, diggers, men with tools, not swords, parchment, not tablets. They speak a language you don't recognize, Greek, perhaps, or something newer. They don't rebuild Babylon. They excavate it, like it's a corpse, like it's theirs. They brush dirt from broken statues. They lift tablets from the ground with reverent hands. They debate meanings, copy symbols into notebooks, speculate wildly. One of them finds your old clay fragment, the one with no name, just a thought scratched hastily before you buried it. He holds it up, frowns, shrugs, places it with the others. No way to tell it from any other scrap. No way to know what it meant. That's the moment you understand. Oblivion isn't darkness. It's misfiling. It's your name mistaken for someone else's. Your meaning flattened by translation. Your lie recast as truth. Or worse, as trivia. Later, in a museum you will never see, a placard will be placed beside one of your city's fragments. It will read, "Clay tablet, unknown author, possibly astronomical in nature." And that's it. Not wrong, not right, just incomplete. Babylon, the city of math, of myth, of stars and story, remembered only as a site, a location, coordinates on a map. The heart, gone. The voice, faded. But the outline, still here, waiting. In the next chapter, centuries will pass before the story rises again. Not from tablets, from whispers, from legend. When Babylon became a metaphor, you are gone now. Not dead, that already happened long ago, but gone from memory, from records, from meaning, and yet, Babylon is still here. Not the bricks, not the temples, not even the rivers which have shifted, wandered away like bored gods. What remains? The name. It shows up in strange places now. In the scrolls of Greek historians, who never saw the city but wrote about its wonders secondhand, embellishing freely, filling gaps with imagination. In scriptures, where Babylon becomes a symbol not of power, but of sin, of pride, of the world gone wrong, not a city. A warning. Fallen is Babylon the Great. You read that line years, centuries, eternities later, and realize something. Your home didn't die. It was repurposed, again, this time not by kings, but by prophets, not by law, but by myth. In their stories, Babylon isn't real, not anymore. It's a stand-in. A code word for empire, for arrogance, for everything they want you to fear. The towers of Babylon, now a tale of hubris. The laws of Babylon, forgotten beneath the thunder of Mount Sinai. The stars of Babylon, replaced by different heavens. And yet, people keep coming back to it. They dig it up. They name their cities after it. They whisper its stories around fires. They use it in songs, in slogans, in sermons. Babylon becomes everything and nothing. A city made of echoes. You, whoever you were, are not remembered. But the world you lived in, the myth you helped create, it's still moving, like a current under sand. Still shaping things. Still dangerous. In the next chapter, Babylon will rise again. Not in Mesopotamia, but in the imagination. It's thousands of years later. The rivers are dried, the ziggurats are gone, and the cuneiform tablets rest behind glass in sterile halls far from home. And yet, Babylon is alive. Not in form, in symbol. In Paris, a poet calls the world's chaos Babylon. In Harlem, a preacher shouts, "Babylon must fall." In Kingston, musicians sing about escaping Babylon's chains. They've never seen the Euphrates. They don't know Marduk from Murdoch, but they understand what Babylon means. Control, corruption, power, dressed as divinity. And for some, strangely, freedom. The ruins still exist. Buried in sand and time, they draw archaeologists, tourists, dreamers. One man stands at the edge of a crumbled gate, reading an inscription in a language he doesn't speak. Another woman copies the symbols into her sketchbook not to understand, but to feel. A child walks past a replica of the Ishtar Gate in a museum in Berlin, tugging at their parent's hand. "What's Babylon?" they ask. And the parent answers, "An ancient place, powerful, mysterious, lost." And just like that, it isn't. Not lost. Not really. You see, Babylon never needed its bricks to survive. It was never just a place. It was always an idea, a mirror, a warning, a riddle whispered across time. What happens when humans believe they can build eternity? Not with love, but with laws. Not with community, but with control. Not with truth, but with story. And if you followed this tale all the way here, if you felt the dust in your lungs and the weight of stars on clay, then you already know the answer. Because Babylon wasn't just a city you couldn't survive. It was a city that never wanted to be survived, only remembered. In pieces, in echoes, in dreams.